Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're getting into the absolute true engine of any successful business strategy. We're talking about corporate culture. Because let's face it, getting thousands of people moving in the exact same direction when the whole world is shifting underneath them, it's incredibly tough. Okay, let's dive into this. How in the world does a company bounce back from an epic billion-dollar product disaster to pull off one of the greatest corporate cultural turnarounds in history? We're going to look at a story of intense internal warfare, a radical transformation, and honestly, the incredible power of just a single word. To figure this out, we're drawing straight from Rita McGrath's fascinating book, Seeing Around Corners: How to Spot Inflection Points in Business Before They Happen. Specifically, we're zeroing in on a concept she calls galvanizing the organization. McGrath makes this super compelling point. Just seeing a massive market shift coming, that's not enough. You actually have to mobilize your entire organization to respond to it. Otherwise, you're just watching the train hit you. But, before any organization can successfully navigate those massive market shifts, those strategic inflection points, there has to be a major paradigm shift in how we think. We really need to unpack the difference between a complicated system and a complex one. And this distinction is absolutely vital. See, in a complicated setup, you can basically predict what's going to happen just by knowing the starting conditions. Think of a Boeing 747. It is a massively complicated machine, no doubt about it. But its operations are totally predictable because we know exactly how all the parts work together. But an organization? Well, the second you put humans in a room together, suddenly you're dealing with a complex system. It's way more like an air traffic control network. Everything is highly interdependent. Things can flip at a moment's notice, throwing out completely unexpected surprises. So treating a messy, complex human environment like it's just a predictable, complicated machine, that is a terribly dangerous trap for business leaders. So, what actually happens when an organization completely ignores that complex reality? Well, let's look at our massive warning tale for today: the absolute disaster of the Microsoft Kin in 2010. Let's map out exactly how a genuinely brilliant idea got totally crushed. Back in roughly 2008, Microsoft exec Jay Allard had this vision for a cloud-centric phone targeting a younger, social media-obsessed demographic. Great idea, right? Microsoft even acquired a company called Danger for a reported $500 million just to kickstart the whole thing. But then, during development, the team was completely siloed off from the higher-end Windows Phone group. Fast forward to 2010, the Kin finally launches carrying a price tag well north of $1 billion in development costs. And then, just 6 weeks later, it was dead, completely discontinued. So why on earth did it fail so spectacularly? The crazy part is, it wasn't the market. It was toxic internal friction. McGrath points out this quote from Engadget, highlighting how Andy Lees, the head of the Windows Mobile division, basically saw the Kin project as a massive threat. He was reportedly, quote-unquote, jealous, terrified it was pulling resources and mindshare away from his own roadmap. So he pressured leadership, took control of the Kin, delayed it, and ultimately stripped away its core appeal. Microsoft had cultivated this culture where internal divisions literally competed against each other to win instead of teaming up to beat the market. They treated their company like a simple machine where you just push a button and ship a product, entirely ignoring the incredibly complex human dynamics of jealousy, silos, and toxic competition. Okay, fast forward a few years. Microsoft realizes it desperately needs a reboot. And not just a new product roadmap, but a reboot of its very soul. When Satya Nadella stepped in as CEO in 2014, he realized right away that the only way to survive massive tech inflection points, like the explosion of mobile in the cloud, was by completely cultivating a growth mindset. Just imagine being a high-level executive at the old, hyper-competitive Microsoft. You walk into your first senior leadership meeting with the new CEO, and you see this single word, empathy, projected in massive capital letters on the screen. Honestly, it was a shock to the system. But Nadella passionately believed that empathy, both with customers and, crucially, with each other, was the only way to build the psychological safety needed to actually innovate. And this brilliantly illustrates Nadella's massive cultural pivot, drawing heavily on psychologist Carol Dweck's work. The old Microsoft, it operated entirely on a fixed mindset. Employees were know-it-alls who spent all their time trying to prove they were the absolute smartest people in the room. Being right was everything. Nadella flipped that. He demanded a growth mindset. He wanted a culture of learn-it-alls, people who were genuinely open to new info and cared way more about getting better than just looking good. He made it crystal clear he was optimizing for leaders who actually wanted to be part of a team. The era of running isolated little fiefdoms was over. But how does that translate to the day-to-day grind? I mean, you can't just mandate a new mindset, right? To truly change a culture, you have to completely redefine how you measure success. Specifically, you have to start measuring customer love. To do this, Nadella broke the company's obsession with lagging performance metrics and shifted focus to leading power metrics. Think of it this way. Lagging indicators, like revenue, profit, or EBITDA, are basically looking in the rearview mirror. They only tell you about past outcomes. But leading indicators, or power metrics, things like monthly active users, usage growth, and genuine customer satisfaction, those are your headlights. They point directly to future success. So the crucial point is perfectly summarized by Nadella himself. He made this incredibly massive bet. If you get the leading indicators right, if you legitimately focus on generating customer love, the revenue and the profits will naturally catch up. He challenged his entire company to literally fall in love with these leading indicators, rather than just frantically chasing end-of-quarter financial targets. Now, galvanizing an entire organization cannot just be a top-down command and control thing. You've got to push power out by empowering the edges of the company. When everyone shares a clear purpose, you can actually give every single employee the authority to act on new information right when they see it, without waiting weeks for some directive from headquarters. There's this fantastic little anecdote from the book that nails this. During an employee Q&A, this frustrated guy basically asked Nadella, "Hey, why can't I print a document from my mobile phone?" Nadella didn't apologize or promise to form some exploratory committee. He just looked at him and said, "Make it happen. You have full authority." See, he wanted to shatter this habit where employees overestimate what leadership needs to do for them and totally underestimate what they can just fix themselves. And Nadella didn't just talk the talk. He hardwired this empowerment into the company through various specific mechanisms. For instance, he kicked off leadership meetings with a researcher of the amazing segment, letting teams from anywhere in the org pitch directly to the top brass. He actively engaged with internal disability community groups, which was partly inspired by his son Zane, just to constantly challenge his own worldview. He scrapped the boring annual meeting for a massive one-week hackathon, where over 18,000 employees work on whatever passion projects they want. And he heavily championed the Microsoft Garage for wild experimental app development. These aren't just cute corporate perks. They are deliberate, sensitive antennas placed at the very edges of the organization to pick up early warnings of the next big market shift. So what does all of this mean for us? Well, it brings us to the ultimate takeaway of this explainer. An organization is a complex, breathing network of humans, right? It's not a predictable, complicated machine. If you want to survive the next massive inflection point, you absolutely cannot rely on internal silos, rearview mirror spreadsheets, or a toxic culture of proving who is smartest. You've got to ask yourself, is your organization currently rewarding the know-it-alls, or are you actively building a culture of resilient, empathetic learn-it-alls who are empowered to see around the next corner? Take a hard look at your own team this week and answer honestly. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.